Thank you for joining us today and welcome. We're very excited to introduce you to our team and to this program. This is a program that is pretty unique and has really universal appeal. And we're excited to bring this to you and collaborate with you and get your help with a problem that we think matters to just about everybody here. So again, welcome for those folks just joining. We're going to be introducing you today to the NASA Convergent Aeronautics Solutions team and to the program that they're sponsoring and the problem that they're asking for our help with. So we're excited about the conversation. I'm Diane Finkhausen, I'm CEO of Shoshin Works. Our organization really is helping organizations work through collaborative problem solving and operations. We bring ecosystems together in ways that drive great value for organizations that are solving elite problems. And we're super excited and honored to work with the NASA team on this particular effort. So again, today we're going to be talking about the Future Scaping Our Skies program. If you ever have dreamed about collaborating with NASA, helping them to solve elite problems and exciting challenges, this is probably the program for you. This particular program is really stepping back and envisioning what the world might look like in 30 years and trying to piece together the many dynamics that we're seeing unfold in our markets today in a way that can help craft a vision for what aviation looks like in the future. So we're excited to connect with you today and introduce you to our team. And today we're going to spend about 30 minutes walking through introductions, an overview of the program itself. We're going to step over to the website that is hosting this particular program and walk through what you need to know about the program and navigating the site itself in order to participate. And then we're going to dive into just an open discussion. We'd love your feedback, your questions, your ideas. We're opening up the chat window for your ideas, your reactions, and your questions. And as we get into the open discussion section towards the end of the call, the second half of the call, we'll attack those questions in the chat window and make sure that we are sharing all the information you need in order to collaborate with the team on this particular program. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'd like to just very quickly introduce you to our hosts. Keith Wickman, Vikram Shyam, and Steve Grimaldi are here representing the Convergent Solutions Group within NASA. And this team, their vision and their request for your collaboration on some of the elite problems that they're solving for is we're very fortunate to have this opportunity to collaborate with this team. You can see here on the page the experience on this team is extraordinary, and we're excited to have the opportunity to collaborate on these problems. This particular team is taking on some of the more improbable challenges in aviation and envisioning how technology, how societal impacts, environmental, economic impacts might inform the future of aviation and how we can perhaps shape research and development today in order to drive a better aviation experience in the decades to come. And really that's what we're here to talk about today and ask for your help with. So with that, I'd like to hand it over quickly to our hosts. Keith is going to walk us through their vision for this particular effort and how we might be able to collaborate to drive better outcomes for the program.
So we're trying to identify some opportunities that are really transformational, connected to aviation. So the kinds of questions we're asking are: how can aviation transform society? And the converse of that, which is, what are the developments going on in the world around us? Now, different areas of technology and society and such that can influence aviation as well in a transformational way. And I see that Keith is on here.
Let's do a mic check. You guys have me?
Yep, can hear you.
Good. Interesting. Okay. Let's try
All
that
right.
again. Hello, everybody. I'm Keith Wickman. So I lead our CAS team. Convergent Aeronautics Solutions is the name of our project, and I want to thank you all for participating not only today but also in our crowdsourcing challenge, future scaping. So at a really high level, what I'd like to do is motivate who we are as CAS and really what we're going after. So um, and also what I'm not going to do most likely is read the slides, but you can read it. I'm going to talk in maybe broader terms. So um, our world is increasingly defined by change and by increased connectivity as well. So NASA at NASA, we're looking for better ways to anticipate what the future is going to hold. And the goal there is so that we can support better decisions today, what we're investing in, what we're working on going forward as we move towards that future. So this invitation, as you know, is open pretty much to everybody. Um, in fact, I would say the typical, let's say, aerospace engineer that's really into aviation or really into space, we pretty much know how to get to those folks. If you're one of them as well, awesome. But the nature of convergence is really bringing in a breadth of thought, a breadth of experience, a diversity of understanding, and even temperament and vision for the future. So we're bringing together and asking pretty much anyone, innovators, futurists, pragmatists, to help us build a better understanding of these possible potential future state scenarios. So you can imagine it as our project is getting in a time machine, zipping forward to a number of potential futures, looking for those desirable futures, and working, then coming back home and deciding, okay, well, what steps do we need to take? What miracles really need to happen between now and that future? So we don't want to provide too much guidance and overview or direction, really, because we want this to be wide open as you guys come forward with your thoughts and brilliance and ideas and creativity. So the goal there is mapping societal, economic, technological, environmental, political, regulatory, etc., all these trends. Um, uh, but the common theme is aviation. So, and think 30 years from now, what are those desirable futures? What role does aviation play, and what role do those futures play on our industry, on aviation? Where do we fit, and then what do we need to do as NASA Aeronautics to move forward into that space? Um, our brand at NASA, as you're aware, really is exploration. Um, I think that NASA is very good at exploration. We're also very good at executing research and development. This project in particular, we have a strange charter, a wonderful charter, and that is to really lean into the exploration side, um, and stretch ourselves, take risks in projects such that we can really identify those long-term kinds of challenge. So let me just say a word about convergence. here on that last slide. Good. So convergence is in our name, of course. We're the Convergent Aeronautic Solutions project. But that notion of convergence really is a convergence of different perspectives, of technologies, of disciplines, of industries, humans, which embrace knowledge of what's happening outside of the traditional channels that we're comfortable using here in NASA Aeronautics. And it considers how those events or trends might inform what's needed from or to be contributed to by aviation. So, for example, what's happening in, let's say, agriculture or real estate might influence aviation opportunities to benefit agriculture or real estate, or another set of spaces altogether. So how do we know if we're not listening for this, if we're not exploring those sort of unmapped spaces or those spaces where things have not been put together in new and unique ways? And that's really the power of convergence. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Steve for a little more detail on the call itself. So Steve.
Sorry, Keith, I dropped for a second there. Can you repeat that, please?
Oh, I was handing it over to you for the next part of the presentation. Or
Okay.
Sorry, is it Vic?
I think it was Vic, but again, I dropped for a second, so.
Yeah, actually, we can hand it back to Diane, because Keith, I think you've covered pretty much most of the call as well as the vision and what we're expecting. And I think Diane has some information on the submissions. So we might just hand it back to Diane. Yep.
I do. Thank you, Vic. And Keith, thank you for sharing your vision. It's just so inspiring for those of us that don't work every day with the NASA team. Many of us were running around as kids with a little astronaut kind of uniform on. We all imagine you've helped us all dream of a better tomorrow, right? And you've not only helped us, dream bigger dreams, but also make it happen. And for many of us, the opportunity to contribute to your efforts to imagine and realize a better future for aviation is just inspiring. And what I love about this program is the accessibility. To your point, Keith, if anyone has a point of view regarding what the future could look like, should look like, might look like, we're all seeing technology evolve in ways that affect us all, right? Personalization, better experiences online and in person. We're seeing societies come together. The world is getting smaller, more accessible. So really, if you have an opinion regarding what the world might look like in 20 to 30 years, you can participate in this program. It is just something that that we can all help with. And to Keith's earlier point, we've designed this program so that it is really open to everyone's interpretation. So for those of you on the line here with us that are interested in participating, really the ask here is to really just construct your vision for what the future might look like, right? Understanding where aviation is today, where aviation might evolve over the next couple of decades with the onset of more technological advancements, societies coming together, autonomy, intelligent systems, advancements in regulatory frameworks, regulatory innovation. If you have a point of view, you can pretty easily construct a timeline, a storyline. You can assemble some reference information, whether it's articles or images or data sets that really underpin your vision for what the future looks like. So that's really what we're asking for in this challenge. The structure of this challenge is to to ask for your help in picking a scenario that you believe represents the future of aviation. We've offered some sample scenarios. They're listed here on the page in light font: the accessibility, autonomy, innovation, simplicity, or pick your own scenario. If these sample scenarios don't represent your vision for the future, tell us what your vision is. Construct a scenario of your own, and put together the storyline and the timeline and the data that underpin your view and your vision. That's what we're asking for in terms of a successful submission for this particular challenge. And the way we're going to evaluate these proposals from the community is fairly open. We're just looking for clarity in your articulation of what the future is going to look like. We're looking for any substantiation that you bring to make your case for what that future is going to be, whether it's data sets or imagery, visual storytelling, reference articles. Just help us see your pathway to that future. And then visual synthesis. A picture tells a picture is worth 1,000 words. So if you can help synthesize your vision for the future with some visual artifacts, that would be helpful for us as well, to help us see that same future. Those are really basically the guidelines by which we're going to be evaluating the proposals for the future of aviation that we receive in this campaign. The submissions are due, just as a matter of process, all submissions are due on June 1st. That's our deadline. And then the NASA team and our team will be collaborating on evaluating the submissions throughout the month of June. And then we'll be announcing the winners of this particular campaign on Wednesday, July 8th. And then we have an award pool of about $21,000. So the chances of ending up in the money on this particular campaign are pretty good. So we would just very much encourage you to share your vision with us and help us solve for the future of aviation. We'd love to have your perspective on this one. So
Hey, Diane, one thing I'd like to add, if I could. Oftentimes with crowdsourcing opportunities like this, we might post a problem and ask for solutions. In this particular case, we're actually asking for the problems. So as you're defining those 30-year scenarios and that view of the future, what we're looking for is where the challenges are. What we're looking for is where those barriers are to not only feasibility, but also the desirability piece. That is, what will be the value to society or to industry or to whomever the stakeholders are, and also the viability, which really talks about, okay, are there insurmountable regulatory challenges? Are there insurmountable business or commercial things to propel us as a society forward towards that kind of a solution? So again, the theme there is we're crowdsourcing the problem space as much as and maybe more than the solutions to that problem space, if that helps. So thanks.
Great point. Great clarification, right? If we can help each other kind of look around corners, right? To Keith's point, we're going to be able to think through these problems and look around those corners much more effectively than any of us can do alone. So fantastic. So I'm going to, at this point, I'm going to hand things over to Shane Jenkins online with us. So for those of you that would like to help us with this particular program, we'd like to make sure that you have an opportunity to navigate the site And Shane is going to kind of walk us through where you can find information and submit your proposals.
Absolutely. Thank you, Diane. Hi, everybody. I'm Shane from HeroX. And before I hop into a quick screen share to show you about our platform's website, I just want to remind you that if you have any questions, please feel free to send them to me directly in the chat window, and then I will review them for sharing with our NASA team. But feel free to share them as I'm going through this. So let me share my screen. 1 second. So this is what our main challenge page looks like. If any of you go to herox.com/futurescaping, you'll see this. What this does is it offers you a variety of information about the challenge. Starting with, at the first tab here, overview, you can get a pretty quick summary of what this challenge is about. What are they trying to understand? What's the problem? And what can you do to help provide the challenge breakthrough? And if you go through this tab, you'll eventually see at the bottom a solve this challenge button. There's also one here at the top, solve this challenge. Whenever you're ready to participate and you've signed in with the HeroX account, you can click that button to start your submission. I'll get to that in 1 second. Second, here on the guidelines tab, this is where you go to get more of the nitty-gritty details about the challenge. So here we have the prize structure, some information about the timeline, how do you win, what the selection requirements are, what is NASA looking for, and also the scenarios that Diane mentioned earlier. They're provided here if you want some inspiration for the kinds of forecasting that you're going to do with your submission. And again, you're not limited to these scenarios. There's this create your own at the top, but there's quite a wide variety here to get the juices flowing. So please feel free to read through this whole list. Secondly, at the bottom, we have some more evaluation rules. So this is the criteria by which your submission will be judged. Diane already touched on this before, but you can see it in detail here. We're looking for clarity, substantiation, and a visual synthesis, and they'll be weighted accordingly given these percentages at the right. Last thing to check is that this challenge has some restrictions for eligibility. So please read through the rules down here to find out whether you are eligible or how to join a team that would be eligible if you yourself are not. And so consider all of this as you're going through this challenge, and this guidelines tab here really is going to give you a lot of the information you need to get started. So I definitely suggest starting there. Lastly, the timeline tab here gives you an overview of where we are. Again, the submission deadline is June 1st at 6 p.m. my time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern time or New York time. And we really are strict about that deadline. So be sure that you're finishing your submission well in advance. We don't have much room for people who say, oh, I was trying, but my Wi-Fi kicked out at the last second. Just make sure that you got your submission ready well in advance of the deadline. And we'll send some reminders to help you with that. And lastly, this forum tab here is where you can go to ask questions or talk to other innovators. So our teams are responding to these questions. If you have any more specific issues about the challenge later on or questions about eligibility, there are sections here to guide your questions and where you should put them. So if you just have a random idea that you want to bounce off other people, but it doesn't require our feedback, feel free to throw it in this bottom one. But eligibility or guidelines questions go in these top two. That said, when you're ready to submit your solution or to this challenge or your question, as Keith put it, go ahead and click Solve This Challenge, where you'll be asked to sign our competitor agreement. This states what the rules of the challenge are and that you're agreeing to them. It also has to do with where the ownership of your submission goes to. And if you read through it, you can gain some more information there. But for the sake of demonstration, I'll accept this, and I will compete individually. There you can choose whether or not you want to find a team. Once you're here, you'll still have the option to join a team if you'd like to talk with your fellow competitors, but you can also begin an entry. Last thing I'll say before I do that is you'll notice up here at the top right, the following button has automatically clicked. By entering the challenge, you'll automatically follow it, but you can also follow this challenge for updates without beginning an entry and signing the agreement. So if you just want to see what's going on, find out when people are winning, when the announcements are, what any updates are, you can just follow this in general. But if I begin my entry here, this is the submission form. This is what you will be sending to us for evaluation. And all the required fields are denoted by this little orange asterisk here. So title is required. Your eligibility statement is your location, and all of the following information as well. that has the asterisk next to it. So what you would do is you go through this one by one, filling it out, and you don't have to do it all in one go. You can save it and return to it. You can just do some at a time until you fully understand what's needed. But I would suggest taking a look at this if you want to apply, seeing what's required, and then basing your submission off of this elsewhere. And then when you're ready, transplanting it all into this submission form, which you can then save and preview here at the bottom. And once you've saved it, it gives you the option to submit. You can edit it after submitting, but it's a little more complicated. So just make sure that you've submitted it before the deadline, as I mentioned. That's about it for how the challenge page works. Just again, check out the guideline and overview tabs, and feel free to talk to us in the forum. That's all I've got, Diane. I guess I'll throw it back to you and prepare for questions.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Shane. Super helpful, and I'm sure we may have some questions about that navigation in the Q&A session. But we've already teed up a lot of great questions from the community here. So what we will start doing is working our way through the questions that we've received so far, and folks, just weigh in here, and if as we're answering the questions, if we haven't provided enough clarity, or if you have a follow-on question, just jump in and we'll do our best to get you the information that you need. And just real quickly, and kind of a foundational question here, and it's a great question for the team here. Really, the audience is interested in your definition of aviation. Right, we're seeing a lot of synergy between aviation and space, right, and aviation and other industries. So maybe if we can talk about your definition of aviation as a kind of a a foundational framework that that can help them define a better proposal. It's a good starting point. So Keith, Vic, Steve, who would like to tackle that one?
Yeah, let me take a swing at that. First of all, I would say I appreciate the question. I have an answer for it, but this is an area where I wouldn't want to constrain you. You know, I would say, what's your view of aviation? Yes, I did say this is all in the context of aviation. So let me go ahead and give you our perspective. So NASA Aeronautics is engaged in soup to nuts, really, as it relates to aviation. It's unmanned vehicles, it's tiny little micro vehicles, it's very large transports, it's supersonic transports, it's hypersonic vehicles, it's high altitude, long endurance, which could include airships, which could include, just really long wingspan electric vehicles that just orbit over a place in space, and even things that are close to space, to a space plane as well. So anything is pretty much fair game. So again, I wouldn't want to limit it too much, but that's generally what we're talking about.
Excellent. Thanks, Keith. Great. It just really leaves the landscape wide open, right? So for the folks that are formulating a proposal for this one, really just try to keep an open mind and think broadly about your proposal, the proposal that you're developing.
If I can add another piece on that, the other thing I wouldn't want to do is narrow it too much for you to think about specific vehicles or individual vehicles. That is, one potential is a system of interconnected and maybe diverse vehicles as well. That's all aviation. The management, control, communication of a mission for a vehicle or a set of vehicles or a system of vehicles is also part of the aviation system, if you will. So anyway, I wanted to throw that in there as well.
Great point, Keith. And to that point, for folks that might want to focus on the passenger experience, right, or the systems that support the aviation space, as a whole. So perhaps data infrastructure or other technological infrastructure.
You got it. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Great point.
Yeah.
We have some
And
questions.
it's also Diane, it's also the systems that aviation is going to interact with. So the societal systems, the political systems, the economic systems, those are also things to capture and keep in mind. It's not just the inside, but also looking outside.
Very good.
It's a great point, Vic, right? We're seeing in some cases a lot of migration from dense urban areas out to more distributed communities, right? And so how does that affect aviation, right? And the needs of aviation and expectations. Yeah, great. Steve, other thoughts regarding that particular topic?
Yeah, I think I agree with, thanks, Diane. I agree with Vic on that, that it is everything that aviation touches as well. Or what prevents advancement in aviation. It isn't always just technological barriers or even economic barriers, but sometimes it's just societal or desire or access or need or perceived need. It's any of the above. So that's a great point that I'm glad Vic and Keith brought out too. It's not just how to make a better vehicle. It's anything that can enable the betterment of life through aviation is a good way to put it. So as Keith said, yeah, we don't want to constrain anyone at all. Even in the multimodal approach to transportation, if aviation's a part of it and other components are not, what is the integration between the non-flight type vehicles and an air type vehicle? So yeah, wide open for looking at some of the issues that might come out in that, economically, societal, or technological.
Yeah, don't just think big as well. So, someone brought up space and how we're going out into space, but also think inward. So, what if you had, vehicles that fly around and you ingest them, and now they're part of your medical monitoring system or health monitoring system? That's an interface now between aviation and medicine. So consider all scales. It's a huge spectrum. Don't constrain yourself in scale or scope or any of that stuff.
Yeah, great points. Really, the sky is the limit, pun intended. I'm here till Tuesday, right? So, and this answers a lot of the questions that we're getting in the chat window here, right? How specific should a successful proposal be, right? How focused should it be in the format? So really, again, common theme here. Folks helping us think through these opportunities, these challenges. We are open to whatever format, right, that works best for you and the story that you want to tell, whether that's a video or a Word document or Excel, PowerPoint. We're trying to open up the frame of your the thinking that you're bringing to this particular collaboration. The format that you're using to convey your vision for what the future of aviation looks like, and really taken a very open approach to how we're thinking through this problem set together. Let's see, what are some of the other questions that we have in the chat window here? Shane, anything that you see in the chat window that we have not addressed as of yet?
Some questions about eligibility, but also there's a question asking where someone should go to find more information about the aviation industry in general. I think because this challenge is asking for people with wide variety of perspectives, whether it's like a biologist or a teacher or something, if they want to get a little bit informed when creating their submission, is there a place they can go that doesn't prime the pump too much?
Yeah, actually, great question. And we do have some information in the challenge site that Shane just walked us through. I would suggest that the NASA team's sites are just exceptional in terms of inspiration and reference. So, and maybe Keith and Steve and Vic, if you can share some of your favorite go-to resources, that might be helpful for the team as well.
The ones you mentioned, at least for me, make a lot of sense. But you know, I really broadly, Google. There's going to be a lot of a lot of places you can travel there relative to mining information. I would refer you back, at least as it relates to the CAS project. And again, I'm a little hesitant to lead you anywhere specifically because I wouldn't want to constrain you and think, oh, that's what they're looking for, because most likely that's not the case. But we do have our parent program, which is called Transformative Aeronautics Concepts Program, TACP, has puts on a showcase once a year, and it's a 3-day event. There's lots of interviews, videos, report outs of the various projects. My project is one of the 3 projects underneath that program. So the TACP showcase, you can watch those videos and see the kinds of work that we've been engaged in and the breadth of that. For sure, that's a place to start, but I feel like that's a really weak answer, to be honest. So, Steve and Vic, help me out. Anything come to mind?
Yeah, it's so the NASA sites are really good to see what's going on now. NASA Aeronautics, any of the mainline programs, and this TACP type program Keith's mentioning. So it can give you an idea of what's been happening to date. And then to be a little snarky, don't do any of that because we are trying
Right?
to really push the boundaries. The CAS project itself is a very small component of NASA Aeronautics. NASA Aeronautics is extremely successful and skilled at connecting with large industries in the United States and driving forward technological advancement. And we're not here to replace that. That is brilliant. They do a great job. We're here to be different, to be weird, to look at the crazier ideas that they're just not allowed to in mainstream research. So you can look at that for reference. But lately, as I've been trying to explore, and I'm sure Vic has many more intelligent sites than what I do, I'll pick other industries and I'll say, okay, what's industrial farming doing? What is the agricultural sector? What are their stumbling needs and technology transfer? What are their needs in environmental assistance? What are the constraints or pushbacks on, say, so the other night I was looking up the whole push of fossil emissions or the continuation of the greenhouse gases of the farming industry, of the dairy farming industry. It's not to pick a side in either of that, but it's to look into, well, what are the solutions some of the large farms are going for? What are the solutions some of the mid-sized farms are going for? I explore that and you try and find, okay, there might be possibility to use aerial or aeronautics type solutions for different things. If you look into the smart cities, the whole smart city concepts of when they're talking about designing infrastructure and buildings, even to have sensors to them or to adapt to weather or the environment or just manufacturing sector in smart cities. There's always a connection there to what aeronautics can do or what aviation solutions or problems exist there. So I'd explore some of those areas. So explore maybe non-traditional aeronautics when you do your searches. And then try and think, well, where is there an aviation issue coming up or a solution to come up? I would think of.
I love that, Steve. That's a great answer.
Cannot beat Steve's answer, so I will not add anything to that. I will say, yeah, I will say even from the perspective of let's say non-technology stuff that Steve brought up, you think about magicians, right? This is very odd source maybe. Magicians are all about disappearing things. So if a magician somewhere has come up with an invisibility cloak, can you think of an application for where that might be helpful? And we don't want drones flying around everywhere, right? So can you use that technology now to cloak drones? I'm just throwing this out there, but that's the kind of thing to look for. And then how does that how does that integrate with the rest of society? Now you need a system that's able to track these things because you can't see it. There's a safety aspect. So start to form those threads in your mind. Don't necessarily start from where is NASA in terms of aviation, just like what Steve said. Start from just a blank slate. Be childlike. What if I had the ability to fly? What would I do? And start from there. And then after you get your story together, you can go back and say, has anyone done this? Does anyone want this? That kind of stuff.
And for those who listened to Vic's first statement and said he couldn't top me, you clearly know that that's wrong. As I came up with, cow excrement, and he's talking about making drones invisible. So clearly we see who the superior contestant is.
Yeah, let me add on one more piece to there to take it. Well, anyway, take it to another place just a little bit. So there is the notion. It's natural, especially for more engineering types, to think in terms of what's possible and then how do we assemble that and put it together. Try not to do that. Just suspend disbelief for the moment of, okay, this is probably impossible. Don't be completely ridiculous of maybe making yourself actually disappear, or maybe teleportation is a step too far, an invisible hole, or creating unobtainium or perpetual motion or something like that. Okay,
yeah.
Set those completely ridiculous things aside, but the somewhat ridiculous, just go with it. It's okay. And if it helps you tell this story, you don't have to have an answer for how that would be created. Tell the story of what would be created with with that thing that seems impossible, perhaps. That's really what the CAS project is about, is suspending a little bit of that disbelief and then looking for, okay, how can we chase out some of the risks of those required miracles that need to happen? But that's our job. Your job is to come up with the wild ideas.
And there's no judgment. So adding on to what Keith said, which was pretty amazing. There's no judgment here. It's not like we're trying to find the right answer. So it's actually an opportunity for you to guide where we go next, where we're going to research, what kind of future you want to see. So this is your chance to help determine that. Think of it like that.
Yeah, it's a great point. So if we take one of those crazy ideas, right, teleportation, if we start to break that down, teleportation is really about removing the friction in the transport process, right? So if we focus on that, right, what are some of the problems that we can eliminate, right, and some of the risk that we can eliminate or reduce in the transportation process. I love this concept of unimpossible missions, right? That the Convergent team is taking on these unimpossible missions for aviation. Maybe if you can help us, one of the other questions that we've received in this last discussion is maybe where you have seen some inspiration for other research projects that you've taken on, right? So what are those sparks that have ignited other research work that you've done in Convergent Aeronautics? And help us kind of frame up where you've seen that inspiration that has driven some of your research effort in the past.
Yeah, I can take that, but I'd love for Vic to come next after me. I'm going to give a somewhat pedestrian example. It's pedestrian only in that we've made some really good progress on it, so it doesn't feel quite as impossible anymore. And then I'd love Vic to talk about some of the ideas that maybe we haven't yet pursued that might be a little more provocative, Vic. The one that comes to mind is, and this is a little bit of a 911 call on NASA, 911 being an unforeseen big felt need or actual need coming from the outside upon us that we had to work on convergence around. That is, And in this example, you know, the wildfires out west in the U.S. the last couple of years, and fear for this season as well. You know, we use aviation for that. That is, you know, large tankers come in and helicopters come in and drop retardant and water on the flames, and they fight it. But there's a whole lot more to that, and there's a whole lot more that aviation could be used for. So how do drones for just situational awareness and understanding where it's going next? How do we speed up the response with aviation? How do we have a better response based on really real-time, up-to-date information? And then how do these various vehicles that are owned and flown and controlled by different people that don't live there, that are all just sort of thrown together and want to quickly respond, how do they pull all of that together and not hit each other, you know, or not create a bigger problem, a bigger emergency? And then wrap in things like first aid and response, you know, for the people that are affected by the wildfire. So one of the things you'll see on the showcase website that Diane put in there, thank you for that, Diane, is a project called Stereo, and it's scalable traffic management for emergency response operations. Is the weird way they worked into that acronym. So that project really looked at rapid setup of a network of communications and data flow, integration with air traffic control as it exists today, as well as insertion of a bunch of unmanned vehicles, protection of that airspace from folks that shouldn't be in there during a fire, like maybe a news crew decides they're going to fly in and take pictures or something like that, not helping with the problem. So all of that management in a really quick and responsive way. And there's all kinds of aviation and then the things that touch on aviation that are required to pull that together. So again, that's pedestrian, that's pretty narrow. It's fighting fires like today. And in fact, last week they were up there training with the CAL FIRE, with the Forest Service and with CAL FIRE. And you know, they're super excited about that as a solution. So that's one end, the shallow end of the pool. Let's go to Vic for the deeper end of the pool.
I didn't quite catch the premise here. Are you looking for for ideas?
Yeah, maybe a provocative example or two.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
thinking of
So like the insect
your
one,
food
or
one.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
for
yes, got it,
example.
got it. So this is one of those things where Keith was mentioning, look at places that you don't traditionally look. So if you look at sustainability, you start from there and you say, how do we have more sustainable eating practices, or our food system? How do we make it more sustainable? Many countries are now looking into these insect-based diets, right? So there's a large number of the species on this planet are insects. So if we start to actually switch our diet to insect-based diets, as you reduce the CO2 footprint, water intake, you may also reduce disease because you don't have, let's say, mosquitoes and things going around spreading malaria. But what's the intersection with aviation? Can you imagine if firstly, what's the intersection with aviation in terms of challenges to insects? Well, insects flat on the vehicles, and they can actually cause these bumps and things like that. It affects the aerodynamics. It costs a lot to clean the vehicle. You can clog up instrumentation like pitot probes. So what's the win-win situation? What if the aircraft is actually able to collect these insects? So what if you have drones flying around your cities, collecting these insects, and then transitioning that to the food system? At the same time, because you're learning how to collect these insects for food, you have to study how they move, how they fly, how they work together. So now you're actually getting into this field of bio-inspiration where you can learn how to operate your drones from looking at how insects fly. So this can start off with a simple concept of like, how do I eat more sustainably, and now you've ended up with aviation and the food system and learning how to operate drones and swarms. So that's a bit of a weird one, I guess.
And if you all remember how I said we want to look for desirable futures,
Yes,
that
yes.
might not be one for me. But anything's
So
fair
that's
game,
viable and feasible, but maybe not desirable.
right?
Would that fit into the keto diet kind of regime? I'm just asking.
Oh, I don't know.
Certainly protein rich.
Probably, yeah.
Absolutely. So, so team, really, wide open, right? If you're interested in bugs, apparently that's fair game. So, no, but brilliant, right? Inspiration can come from anywhere, right? And can inform the research priorities. We can learn from biomimicry. We can learn from other sectors. We can learn from the human experience that is beginning to propagate other industries. We have to think broadly to anticipate those problems in our future and de-risk and remove friction and drive a better outcome for the future. So I know that, again, I'm getting questions in the chat window here. The community is interested in this intersection between aviation and space, and it's a theme that we seem to be coming back to, and how they might be able to leverage what we're seeing in aviation or in space in order to inform scenarios that might be relevant to aviation in a couple of decades. Are there synergies or trends that you're seeing, NASA team, based on the vantage point that you enjoy, right, in aviation and space? Are there trends and factors that this community should be factoring into or could be factoring into the scenario plans that they're building?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, one of the things that you've all been seeing recently, and it's in the press, it's pretty exciting, is, we carried a helicopter to Mars. So that's the first, aeronautics experiment and operations really on another planet, including the moon. I mean, we never flew anything on the moon. There's not a lot of air to work with there. But Mars has an atmosphere, so there is an aeronautics component there. So there is a logical synergy. For decades, this is looking backwards now, but for decades, um, to get things into space, we're in a deep gravity well here at near sea level. So one method to do that has been a captive carry on board a high-speed aircraft, and then you missile launch the space vehicle from that platform once it's at altitude. So you use the heaviness, the heavy airplane and the fuel, that airplane goes home empty, but that gets you a good deal out of the way, out of the atmosphere and out of the gravity well. So that's a synergy or a symbiotic use, I think, of those two domains. Again, I wouldn't. It's definitely not a barrier. When we say aviation or aeronautics, we tend to imply a barrier that it requires some kind of an atmosphere to fly through, and lift is generated in one way or another, as opposed to, let's say, rocket propulsion in a place where there is no atmosphere. So I'm not sure that helps.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Keith. Thank you. And we are going to actually run out of time. We have a lot of really great questions, and what we're going to do is we'll pull some of these questions that we haven't gotten to yet, and we'll drop those into the forum on the challenge site because they're really great questions. I'm going to try to squeeze two more questions in. One is super fast, so I'll start with a longer one first. But this is back to our biomimicry, and Vic, your great example with the insects. But if we take that example, right, and if I, as a community member, I'm developing my proposal, what if I can think of the problem, to Keith's point, like needing to eat crickets, but I can't link it to aviation per se. Maybe I can link my solution path to robotics, but I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with aviation to make them to map from robotics to aviation. Is that relevant? Is that helpful? Should I proceed with a proposal that can link a vision to robotics that I think will be accretive to aviation, but rely on you
Yes.
to map to aviation?
I think the answer is yes. So not everyone will find all the connections, right? All of our minds are wired differently. So any connections you can make to a challenge that maybe we haven't thought about, we can then make that additional bridge, right, connecting to aviation. So as long as you identify the need or the challenge or the problem, the connection to aviation is something we can do as well. So don't get bogged down by that.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank
Great
you, Vic.
answer.
Yeah, great answer. Last question, and it's a doozy, but we'll wrap up with this one. And then, like I said, we'll bring the recording of this session plus all the unanswered questions over to the challenge forum. So meet us over there. But this one's a doozy. So Vic, what's the name of the cat?
Lyra.
Love it.
Like the constellation, Lyra?
Yes, and the Golden Compass character. Yep,
Okay.
his
Nice.
Dark Materials. It's a book. Yep.
And does Lyra eat insects? That's the other question.
Occasionally, much to my chagrin.
Or fly drones.
Yeah, not yet.
Okay, we'll get to that.
Love it.
Very
Love it.
good.
Recreational vehicles for pets. That's another one, right?
There we go. Love it.
Diane, I also just wanted to say thanks to you and to Shane and to Shoshin Works for your support of NASA and in this work, and just point that out and express our appreciation. It's really helpful, and we're very much looking forward. I cannot wait to see what y'all are coming up with out there.
It's going to be great stuff. We have a terrific community kind of convening around the problems. They're excited to work with you, as are we. We're honored. So thank you again, Keith and Steve and Vic and team, and to this community. We're so excited to see what you're going to bring forth, and please help us solve this elite problem and partner up with the NASA team. We sure appreciate your collaboration here. With that, we will see you all on the challenge site. Please jump into that challenge. We'd love to have your perspective there, and weigh into the forum if you have other questions. We'll keep an eye on that on a daily basis and make sure that we're getting you the information that you need. But thanks for joining us today. We'll wrap it up there, and we'll meet you over on the challenge site. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
See you.
Thanks.